Hi friends, welcome to Fitness Junk Debunked. We are a podcast that looks at fitness trends and buzzwords, and we look at it through the lens of science and talking to industry experts. I'm Steph, Iron Lioness, your co-host, and I'm co-hosting with
Ron Dykstra, Coach Ron.
And our guest today is Katelyn Steven. Welcome.
Hey.
I'm just going to say a little bit about Katelyn. Katelyn's pretty awesome. She's a long-standing member of our powerlifting team, which is predominantly women. Katelyn is a feminist, personal coach and speaker, as well as a shelter counselor for survivors of gender-based violence. She meets clients at the intersection of personal growth and social justice activism because she understands that there's personal is political, sorry. Trying to go through it, apologies. She works with clients and their innate wisdom to identify, challenge, and heal the things that hold them back while developing the tools to get and keep them safe. That's pretty awesome work, Katelyn. So thank you for taking some time away from the important work that you do to work out with us, move your body with us, support Iron Lion training, and talk to us today about episode 2, which is what? Butt stuff. And we're gonna hit it from all angles.
What?
All angles. So the running joke here in the Iron Lion training studio is we're always talking about butts. On the powerlifting team, we're always grabbing each other's butts. We seem to be...
I don't do that. That's not part of it.
You better not.
That's not
There's
part
a lot of consensual grabbing and smacking and
That's not my particular job.
So we've been teasing that we were going to do this podcast for a while, and here we are. So why not give it a shot now? So I'm going to throw it to Coach Ron to talk about why he feels it's important to program as much butt stuff as he does for the Iron Lion membership base.
Okay, awesome. Here we go. So my thing is we're going to talk about glute function. We're going to talk about what they do. And so my stuff is real nuts and bolts. You know what I mean? And I'll leave all the political and the societal and all the other stuff alone, okay? So I'm going to start with what do the glutes do? They extend the hip, meaning they help you do things like squat down and stand up. They help you pick things up off the floor. They're also, they abduct the hip, so they move your leg out to the side, and they can also help you internally and externally rotate your leg. So all of these things are important for various important life functions, like squatting, like hinging, picking things up off the ground, bending over, like lunging, those kind of gait patterns of walking, running, ambulation for human beings, all very dependent upon the glutes. And as Dr. Stu McGill has pointed out, the glutes are also very helpful for stabilizing and supporting the lower back. So they have a literal buttressing effect on the lower back. So the butt buttresses. So that's an important function of the glutes. What are the glutes? They're the largest muscles in your body.
If you're lucky.
Glute maximus is what you would think of as the lower glutes, kind of like that. And then the glute medius and minimus are kind of up here around the top of the glutes. And these are the ones that help to abduct the hip and rotate the hip. The glute maximum extends the hip. So it helps you with that standing up kind of movement. Now, we'd like to debunk fitness junk as per the name of the podcast. So one thing I want to debunk today is that you can change your glute shape. You cannot really change your glute shape. And here's why. Largely, it is genetically determined and has to do with things like the length of your femur neck. So this is your leg bone, and this is the part that plugs into the hip socket. This is the femur neck. And for some people, this is longer. For some people, this is shorter.
Some people won't be able to see what you're doing with your fist right now.
Sure, yeah.
Just a heads up.
Oh yeah. So if you can't see what I'm talking about, I'm gesturing wildly with my hands right now. But essentially, let's put it like this: that femur neck and the trochanter size and length, that being the other part that attaches you to the hip, they determine what your hip is going to look like from the side. So you can't change that. So if you've got that shape where most of your stuff is at the bottom, your junk is at the bottom of the trunk, that's genetic. You know what I mean? And you can do things like change your body composition. You can gain fat, lose fat. You can gain muscle, lose muscle, but you won't change that exact shape. Similarly, that bubble butt, and again, I'm gesturing, that bubble butt thing that people talk about is largely to do with the angle of your sacrum as it comes off your spine. So if it pokes like out at a sharp angle, your bum will naturally be bubbly. It will stick out at the back. If it goes kind of downwards, you will have a flatter bum. Again, you could add muscle to that, but you cannot change the shape of that per se. You cannot make your sacrum stick out more.
So just for common folk who are like, what is Ron saying? He's using all these science words. We have muscles in our butt. If you don't squat or in the gym, you squat every day when you use the washroom. So if you want to continue to do that on your own, squatting is a major part of that, and it's very important for getting up and down off of things. Also, if anybody's online trying to sell you something that's going to give you a bubble butt, they're probably lying, because you can't change it because of genetics and the shape of how your body is.
The shape of your hips, the shape of your femurs, the femur neck, the trochanter, etc. So if we look at glute training over the decades, it has changed a lot. In the 1980s, people didn't really do a lot of specific glute training in the gym. And if they did, they were along the lines of aerobic type classes that you might see Jane Fonda or people of that nature doing. And that worked kind of in its own way, but bodybuilders at the time and powerlifters and people who had a lot of muscle, they did squats, they did lunges, they did deadlift variations. The glutes of this era are not considered deficient, okay? There were some fantastic butts from the 1980s. Renel Janvier, one of the first male bodybuilders with striations in his glutes, a great example. Laura Criaval, also a great example. And in the 90s, it was actually pretty much the same. And this is the era of Ronnie Coleman, who is largely considered to, if you Google best bodybuilder glutes, you will see a picture of Ronnie Coleman. And how do I know that? Because I Google things like best bodybuilder glutes. So you can imagine my search history is a nightmare. Mm-hmm. But anyway, Ronnie Coleman from the 90s, from the early aughties, he did much the same leg routine throughout his entire career. Famously, lots of squats, lots of leg press, lots of walking lunges, lots of deadlifts, and he built what are considered the greatest bodybuilding glutes. In the 2000s, we start to see a lot of different stuff. We start to see, I'm holding up a book called Glute Lab by Brett Contreras. We start to see the work of people like Brett, and it certainly can't be discounted, the impact that people like Brett Contreras and other trainees have had in glute training. It has changed pretty dramatically. I'm not here to war with Brett in the slightest. He's done a lot of work, and he's a biomechanics PhD. He's invented and popularized a bunch of exercise, and he's renewed interest in lots of other existing exercises that weren't really commonly practiced by the lifting community until more recently. His influence is quite wide. He's impacted athletes, actors, bodybuilders, figure bikini athletes, and all kinds of people are using his exercise and ideas. He's brought to the forefront the idea that glutes are part of very important movement patterns and deserve their own forms of training. And his big exercise that he invented and popularized is the hip thrust, which is a variation of the glute bridge, which you do with your back on a bench. So I'm going to circle back to glute development wasn't considered weak in the 80s, 90s, or previous eras. And Brett's ideas have reached a lot of people, but in the interest of accuracy, I'm not sure we can really say they are really an advance on training glutes, or if it's just a different way to go about it. If it isn't necessary, my question then becomes, can it still be helpful? And sports performance specialists like Eric Cressy have suggested that when you are injured and maybe cannot do squats or deadlifts, the hip thrust could be a great adjunct to your rehabilitation program. So hip thrusting, Brett's idea, might be a great one if you are unable to do the things in lifting that are known to develop the glutes, the squats, the hinging, the lunging, etc. So in terms of pros for recent developments in glute training, that being mostly the hip thrust and those types of exercises, they are non-injurious when you perform them as per suggested. They can be done even when injured, maintaining muscle.
It's important. Yeah.
They could replace exercises that are for some reason not preferred if you're intimidated by barbell squats, deadlifts, that kind of stuff. And yeah, and again, the growing popularity of them, it might be interesting to try it as novelty. Cons for this type of training, it may not be necessary because as we've seen throughout the decades, butts are pretty well built. It does take some setup in the average gym if you don't have the little odds and ends that make it super easy. And it might also be embarrassing to perform thrusting activities in a commercial gym where you are essentially literally thrusting, you know, the center of your body in the direction of others. One other thing that I think is a bit of a drawback, and it sounds kind of funny, because it's so loadable, because you can add so much weight to it, it actually, because it's short range and it's very stable motion, it might require an inconvenient number of plates for you to, weights for you to get much of an effect out of it. The last thing I've been asked to quickly address is why I include glute exercises in the exercise programs of Iron Lion training clients. For the powerlifting team, the glutes are one of the prime movers for their training. So all of them do squats, all of them do various hinging variations, and a lot of them do some kind of isolated glute work as active rest and or specific exercise for them to address weak points. Sometimes I joke that the Sex and the City program, the episode where Samantha dates a 72-year-old millionaire, is kind of the reason that a lot of the regular population get glute training at Iron Lion training. So this is the episode where she dates a really rich guy and she really likes him, but he's 72. And when he walks across the room to use the bathroom or something like that, she notices that his bum is really saggy. And then she decides, no, that's it, forget it. Now, of course, Samantha Cottrell played, you know, a very shallow person, but I do think that the saggy bum of age is one of those things where it's like, it's preventable, and it's almost literally like pushing back against mortality. And I'll say why. Sarcopenia, which means loss of muscle mass, is a normal part of the natural aging process. As we use muscles less, you know, like the prime movers, like the glutes, like the shoulders, they atrophy, they lose size and shape. And it's common, but it's avoidable. So the glutes are part of the most important hinge in the human body. They help us stand up, sit down, walk around, and those things are non-negotiable for me. So while I'm training people here at Iron Lion Training, none of my clients are going to lose strength, size, or shape in their bumps. And that's my way of defying the aging process. And that's what I've got to say. Also, a lot of my job is telling people to stick out their bum. So hey, that's what I got.
So thank you, Coach Ron, for covering the function, training evolution, and life longevity of glute muscle. So we looked at the function, and if you know the Iron Lion training dynamic between Ron and myself, he looks at the function and I look at the fun. So I want to talk about twerking, but okay, stop snickering, stop it. Okay, stop. So twerking is a dance where we isolate those glute muscles, or as I read when I did my deep dive, buttocks. Yeah. So before I dive into that, if you haven't listened to podcast number 1, listening to Black women, I suggest going back and listening to that first, because there are some great actionable steps on how to be a great listener and hold on to information as you're learning. So again, if you are skipping and this is your first podcast, maybe pause here, go back, listen to that podcast, come back, and then we can get radical. So I want to talk first about what radical means. And for me, a definition that really stuck out was by activist and writer Angela Davis. And she introduced the notion that radical from its Latin origin, simply means to grasp something by the root. And she began discourse on the mistreatment and manipulation of the word. So one of the things I want to talk about specifically about that is sometimes there are stigmas attached to words and we don't really understand why those stigmas are put into place. So radical, I've heard other people say they don't really like the word, and the reason why they don't really like the word is that radical has become synonymous with the extreme and the non-desirable and the inconceivable. People of authority have used this incorrect connotation to gain political support via scare tactics. So when you hear a word, sometimes it's good to do what this word even suggests, is just to go to the root of the word and then explore those stigmas that might be attached to the word. So we're going to get radical with body positivity and twerking and butts, because what? This episode is hitting it from all angles. So, you know, Ron and I have been talking a lot. I want to bring Katelyn back into the conversation to tell us a little bit about how she feels about body positivity, acceptance, and the word radical, and how we can apply that to what we do here and how we have fun with our glutes.
Sure. I love all the, I just love butt stuff. Oh my gosh, after you did all that butt stuff to me last week, it's fun, and fitness should be fun. And I'm a big fan of body positivity, which you know, evolved from the fat activism, fat acceptance movement that's been around since the 60s. But it really has kind of caught fire in the past 10 years or so in online spaces. And folks like Sonia Renee Taylor, or yes, that's her name, Sonia Renee Taylor, and Virgie Tovar, and Jessalyn Stanley, and Lindy West. There's so many people that are doing really, really important work in bringing, you know, body positivity and this like concept of radical self-love into the mainstream. So
I was going to get the door, but you and I are going to continue.
Okay, I'm like, what happened? Yeah, and so I also really, really love the word radical. I think it is a badass word that we should reclaim as one that brings us into power, or maybe back into our power. Because another way of looking at radical, because you're saying, you know, Angela Davis likens it to being, you know, pulling things up by the roots. And it's like, we're born inherently without body shame, you know, so we inherit that toxic shit through messages in the world, and we are, you know, allowed to send it back. We're like, we don't want it. And I think that in order to challenge all of these messages, these oppressive bullshit messages, we need something really fucking radical. Excuse me, are we allowed to swear?
I think you're grown.
You invited the wrong person. If we're not. Yeah, so I'm into radical from all the angles.
Now I want to go back to, I had mentioned getting radical with this message before we talked about twerking. So twerking, its origins actually come from West Africa, specifically a place called Cote d'Ivoire. I could have said that wrong. I tried to look at the pronunciations. I've only read it and heard it a few times. And they are documented to have started twerking. Now twerking has changed and evolved and has been attributed to Big Freedia, early 90s, and bounce music in New Orleans. Miley Cyrus, now if you look up twerking, this is just a fun exercise. If you Google twerking, she's been credited for starting twerking on a number of, so I'm looking over because there's people in the studio, because I couldn't believe it. And it's just one of those things that puts in the forefront how we fear Black bodies and how sometimes the things that we celebrate are stigmatized, and they're only appropriate when a white person appropriates it and puts the same thing forward. So even though twerking has been around forever, it's part of our cultural framework, it's fun, it's a body celebration, stemming from how we were, as Black people, feared. Our bodies were feared or over-sexualized. I'm gonna say a name, and this is your homework, Sarah Bartman. You can look up her story and how she was treated for having really large glutes. There's a great book by Sabrina Strings called Fearing the Black Body, The Racial Origins of Fat Phobia, which really tied together nicely what Katelyn has touched on, but also what I'm touching on here. And now I'm going to tie it back to getting radical. I want to reclaim this because even when we have dance things here at ILT, everybody always has a lot of fun shaking their butt. You don't want to know why, because it's fun. But there's always somebody to look down their nose and say it's vulgar, inappropriate, and then it leaves me thinking, why? Why can't we have fun in this way? It's a great workout. If you've ever twerked in a low position, your legs are on fire. We did 5 minutes of it at our body posse party, and like everybody had to strip and take off their clothes because it was just, I wasn't there. Yeah, everybody stripped and sweating and having fun and celebrating the parts of their body that jiggle, the parts of their body that society doesn't want us to celebrate. So again, I gave you a book recommendation from our previous podcast. You can take some tips on how to listen well. I really want to thank Katelyn for joining us today. And I want to thank Coach Ron for giving us background on the function of the glute. And I also want to throw to some fun that my colleague and my homegirl Aziza are putting together, which is a booty camp twerkout. Now, I'm going to say this as a disclaimer. I am not a professional twerker. I know some of you see me and wanted to throw money, but look, that's just not my job. I have a full-time job. But it's a part of my culture. I've been doing it a long time. It's really big in dance hall. So Aziz and I want to teach you basic forms of it and just have fun accepting our body. Right now, there are so many messages in fitness that are trying to get you to not love yourself and to make you feel bad about putting on weight during a pandemic, something we've never encountered before. And I really think that narrative is interesting because it's distracting. It's distracting us from enjoying the life that we have, even though it's limited in terms of our access to connections and people and friends. But also, like, now that it's summertime, making people feel insecure, let's take that back. Let's take that back and have fun and shake the parts that are supposed to shake. Or if they don't shake, let's try to teach them how to shake properly. But it's going to be fun shaking our butts, and we're going to do that Friday. I have to look up in the air because I don't know what month it is. It's July. It's July, right?
It's July.
Yeah, July.
Isn't that crazy?
And we're going to do that on the 24th at 6 p.m. Tell your mama, tell your grandmama. I want to see everybody out. We're going to do this virtually. It's for everybody. And again, it's fun. Let's take away the stigma of it being vulgar or a thing that we can't do to move our bodies in a joyful way. I think we should celebrate our resilience. We should celebrate getting through the pandemic, and we should celebrate if we did put on a little bit of weight. We had that comfort of food. Food is so much more than just fuel. And in a tough, difficult time for a lot of people, it was really great if you were one of those people to put on 10 to 15 pounds. I don't know who that was, maybe somebody else, not me, but it doesn't matter. Like, we can still celebrate, have fun, shake our bodies together in fellowship with other women who want to do the same. So again, thanks to Katelyn for joining us. Thanks, Coach Ron, for looking at the glute from a functional standpoint. Now, before I wrap this up, did you two want to add anything?
I'm going to throw it to Katelyn. Katelyn, do you have final comments? I took the first 15 minutes, which is more than half of our time. I apologize. Anyway.
No, it was good. It was good stuff. I know that sometimes the concept of radical self-love can be really intimidating to people, especially folks who have been living, have a long history of kind of self-loathing and body hate, and really internalizing that kind of weight stigma that is insidious in the world of diet culture and wellness. And so body acceptance and neutrality can be a really good kind of starting point, and can be like a ceasefire, from the hate. But getting to a point of radical self-love is really the goal. And when we can represent self-love by having these wonderful events that ILT is. I think you're going to be world famous for them soon if you're not already.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. Doing it together and doing it in community, and I think when we can represent what self-love looks like, we give permission to other folks who aren't quite there yet, but they get a glimpse of it and they're like, yeah, I want some of that. And so I love that you guys are being on, and I love being a part of them.
Powerful, powerful stuff. Well, thank you for being a part of it. Thank you for amplifying our message. Thank you for your support. Friends, I hope that you join us. Again, that's Friday, July. That's the month we're in. The 24th, it's Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's virtual. Wear what you want. Invite your friends. Have some drinks. Shake it with us. Shake it in radical love and acceptance of your body and how bodacious, curvaceous, bootylicious, and all the issuses that booty do. We'd love
at home.
At home.
At home.
Yeah, so no creeps unless you're married.
Unless you you have your own creep.
Personal creep.
What's up? I just didn't see you there. I was just sitting here. What?
Friends, thank you for joining us on Fitness Junk Debunked, episode 2, butt stuff. Hitting it from all angles: function, fun, political, radical self-love. If you haven't checked out episode 1, go check that out. And this is where I do the famous sign-off, which is live long and eat your veg, drink your water.
No.
Oh.
Find your power.
Find your power. Oh yeah, find your power.
It's your hashtag.
Find your power in the pride.
In the pride. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Please like and share. Bye, friends.